Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I'm Mohyuddin Mirza, your host for the program Food for Thought. I hope you have been following us, that what's going on around us in the world. More recently, what's happening is that agriculture, food, they're such a fascinating subject. All of us have to eat food to live. And in this context, of course, honeybees come to mind many times. Today we are very fortunate that one of a very good friend of mine and a specialist, Dr. Medhet Nasr. Welcome. He's he's called apiculture specialist, is it?
Yes, it's or apiculturist.
Apiculturist, that's right, yeah. So tell me a little bit more. We'll talk about, I know you have prepared something on the bees and the Holy Quran. I think that's what we'll talk, inshallah. But tell us more about it, that how did you get interested in studying honeybees? And I know you and we had been working together at the research center before.
Well, when I was growing up in Egypt, in a small village, our next door neighbor was a beekeeper.
Oh, really? Okay.
So at age of 10 years old, I started looking at his hives and going out with him to the field.
Oh, you were not afraid of bees at that time?
At that time, no. Just always, even if you get stung at the end of the day, eat some honey. So
Right.
that was kind of reward.
Right.
We came back, and later on when I decided to go to college, I went to agriculture,
Right.
and I specialized in studying entomology, and that's science of studying insects.
Right.
And when I went to graduate school, I specialized in studying honeybees.
Yes. Yeah.
And later on, I came to the United States, and I went to California, University of California, Davis, and that's where I did graduate studies.
Mashallah,
And
mashallah.
studied the honeybee.
Yeah. I even noticed when I used to work at the CDC North Crop Diversity Center that you never had that fear of bees. I'm still scared to see them. Is it the sting, I guess, people more scared of?
I think so. Like people, it's word of mouth. Like once you see a bee or a fly or even wasp running around, they say it's a bee.
Right.
And if they get stung, believe it or not, most of the time it's maybe 1 out of 1,000. It is honeybee, but
Really?
most of the time it
Yeah.
is a wasp.
Yeah.
So when we get this kind of interesting phone call, I got stung by a bee. Once you question the person, you realize it was a wasp. And
Yeah.
if bees always busy, and they go and visit flowers, unless you disturb them
Yeah.
and try to get
But
their
is
attention.
it, before we start into the crowd, is it true that bees could sense your emotions and will sting you? I mean, if you don't move your hand, they don't bite you?
That's
Or
correct.
sting you?
That's correct. I
Really?
think the instinct, if you see a bee coming flying around you, the first thing is try to wave your hand.
Yeah.
And
Right.
once you wave your hand,
Right.
basically you are giving them a signal,
Yeah.
I might attack you.
Yes.
So they have to defend themselves.
Oh, that's the reaction.
That's
huh?
the reaction.
Oh, okay.
But if you ask the guy, stay still, don't respond, also they become more nervous.
Right.
So they want to run.
Right.
The bees will fly and catch up with
Right.
them.
Exactly.
So that's
Oh, you mean they could follow you as well?
absolutely, yes, they can. They to several meters, or so it's difficult.
Right.
But unless you go and hide, or just to try to hide your face and sit down on the ground, and the bees will fly away because no longer
Really?
seeing you as a moving subject.
Oh, so they actually don't see you like we have the eyes. They sense you, is it? Or can they see the light as well?
Oh yeah, they do see lights. Actually, they have 3 eyes, small ones, and those are specialized in the light itself.
Three eyes.
three
We
eyes.
only see 2, but
These 2, that we call them compound eyes.
Okay.
The compound eyes, it's basically like TV camera
oh, interesting.
or a video camera.
Right.
So it gives you like almost a TV picture,
Right.
or spots and dots. It shows the picture of the person itself. So if you stay still, all of these spots, which will give you like the dots in the picture, it stays still. So they know there is a subject, but that subject is not moving. Once you move, you change all the dots structure
Right.
and places and position. So they recognize that's moving subject. So
And
that's how
that's happened in a fraction of a second?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Remember that compound eye, each one composed of thousands
Right.
of small little eyes,
Right.
each one is specialized to give that dot. So in reality, the processing of the information is quite fast.
Right. So let's go back now to our starting point, honeybees and the Holy Quran. Of course, as a child, I remember that this always fascinated us, what's written in the Holy Quran. So let's go from there. What have you got with you there?
If you look at Surah Al-Nahl,
Right.
that's the bee,
Right.
it is a fascinating surah because it starts looking at humankind, how the humankind started, even describing how the human being started from sperm and an egg and creating
Absolutely
a
right.
human.
Yeah, that's right.
And later on, as part of the surah, it came to give us an example. And God chose the honeybee.
As a model to describe maybe all social structure and a lot of things?
Absolutely, that's true. Because if you look at the honeybee itself, and God addressed the whole issue in the bee, even though we didn't know at the time why the bee is being chosen as a kind of insect
Right.
to look at as an example to give us an idea. Just most of these things, it gives us an example to go out and think and look at God's creation.
And you're so right. I think that's how God likes to teach us.
Right.
Looking at the creation repeatedly in the Holy Quran, I think there are references to this one, those who understand, those who inquire. So maybe that's what is talking about here.
Yep, that's correct. That's about it. Like when you look at things around you, you should not only just look at it in a passive way and say, "Oh,
right.
wow, this is really something nice."
Yeah,
but we have to go deeper in that issue.
So let's read that. You have An-Nahl chapter 16, verse 69.
Yes.
Can you read the Arabic? You have such a beautiful voice. You see, I love that.
Thank you. Well, it says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَأَوْحَى رَبِّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ أَنِ اتَّخِذِي مِنَ الجِّبَالِ بِيُوتًا وَمِنَ الشَّجَرِ وَمِمَّا يَعْرِشُونَ.
Right, that's the 69. Okay.
Yes. So it says, Lord inspired the bee, choose the habitation in the hills and the trees and in that which they hatches.
Right, yeah. See, Oha is Wahi.
Yes.
That's revelation, inspiration. So what we're trying to say here that God revealed to the bee,
yes,
make thou houses in the hills,
yes,
in the trees, and in the trellis which they built.
Right. In fact, the bee addressed here because we have different kind of species of bees.
Right.
However, the bees addressed in this surah, it's the honeybees, what it's known for us to make honey.
Right.
And
so there could be many species of bees, of course, but honeybee is, even within honeybees, there are many who don't make honey?
Yes, there are.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there's many, just they live in different ways of different social structure.
Really?
However, the only one they live in that social structure addressed in this one, that's the honeybee, that's the one we know.
Which produces honey, which we know.
That's the one we know. Okay. And in this case, actually, it has been known as the cave bee because they always live in places away from the sun. So
when Allah says here that reveal to the bee, make the houses in the hills, so that has some definite meaning there then.
Yes, because if they don't just live in the hill, but in caves or holes in the hill, even on the trees.
Yeah.
If you see them, they are not always exposed to the sun. They always go in between the branches and try to hide.
That's right, yeah.
In lots of tropical areas, they find big holes in the trees. We call it tree holes.
Yeah.
And that's where they hide. So the address here, it's quite correct because that's the kind of what we call it cave bees. And here, all of these places, they give them more security and safety away from any exposure.
Right. So it was primarily they need a little bit of darkness and not direct sunlight.
Yes.
But although you are mentioning they need sunlight for navigation.
It is different because the bees as a colony, and when I say a colony, at certain time in the year, a colony will be consistent of 60,000 bees.
60,000?
Yes. Headed by one single female, that's a queen. And six.
And that reminds me, just before our program, we were talking about, you were mentioning Anittakhazi.
Yes. When we talk about Anittakhazi,
Right.
in Arabic,
Right.
Ittakhazi address a female.
Oh, interesting.
If we are talking about male in Arabic, it says ittakhiz. So here, God in his in the book mentioned ittakhizi. So he's addressing the right individual,
Right.
because all of these females, these are the ones they formed the structure of the whole colony.
Right, right.
However, the males in honeybees, we call them drones.
Right, right.
They do nothing except they eat, fly, and their job to mate with the queen to continue the structure of the colony.
Right. So male have a role to play, of course.
Yes.
In
the whole society.
But it's the queen, which is the
Mother.
mother.
Yes, of the whole. So for that colony, if they live inside that cave,
Right.
that's where they build their own offspring, and that's where they store the honey, and they would rather to stay in the dark all the time.
You were mentioning that at some stage people thought that is the king, there's a king bee who rules it?
Yeah, in early days, especially in the Middle Ages, when people didn't know exactly how
Right,
that colony
right,
formed,
right.
they thought it's a kingdom and it's always led by a king.
I see.
However, later on, once they've realized actually the drone, they don't live part of the, they live only part of the year.
Right, yeah, that's right.
During
Yeah,
winter
yeah,
time,
that's right.
they don't survive.
Right.
So in reality, later on realize it's only one single individual, and that's a queen. And she is a female,
Right.
and she's fertile.
Right, right.
The rest of the workers, those 60,000 workers, they are actually females, but they are sterile.
They're sterile. They are
Sterile. So they don't have conflict
Right.
with the queen,
Right.
which one will lead. And
Interesting.
that's how the structure.
Right.
When you mention how the bees will go outside and fly,
Right, right, right.
it's different kind of activities, because they always fly during the sun, the daytime when the sun is up.
So they start actually right close to sunrise, they're able to go out?
Yeah, but also it's tied with the temperature during.
Okay, I see, right.
Once it is above 12 to 15 Celsius,
Right.
that's the time they are active and they go outside.
Okay, I see.
However, they use in their navigation outside, they use the sun as the source, a stable source, and they look at their position in their box or the hive or the nest,
Right.
and the food flower. So you have triangle. That triangle with those angles and the distance between the hive and the food source.
Tell me again, the triangle, so that our viewers could understand it. When you say triangle, where the hive is located,
Yes, that's one corner.
Let's say is a tree or a cave,
Yeah.
and then sunlight,
The sun position itself,
position of the sun,
right,
and then where the flowers are.
where the flowers are. So these are the three corners of the triangle.
Right, right,
So as the bees, they fly outside,
right.
their wings are used to measure the angle of the sun in their flight.
Amazing. I didn't realize they're so precise that they act like a satellite dish type. You mean?
That's exactly correct. And as they travel,
right.
they measuring the distance.
They actually measure the distance?
They measure the
Mile,
distance.
kilometer?
They measure the distance.
Really?
And as they come back to the house, those first bees will do the job. We call them scout bees, because these are
Right.
the ones they go first to find the food source. They save energy
Right,
as they fly.
right.
And once they come back to the colony. And as we said, that colony lives in the dark. So they start dancing.
Right.
And with that type of dance, they make number of circles with an angle.
Dance mean that they have found a flower?
That means they have found a flower.
Oh.
And they start going in circles. It's like 8 shape, back and forth. The number of circles,
Right.
that's translation.
And that's a clockwise, anti-clockwise? Or,
Yeah, it's like 8.
Oh, I see, okay.
Yeah, they
Oh,
keep
okay.
going back and forth.
Okay,
So the number of dances they made,
right.
it correlates with the distance.
Amazing.
The angle they are using, again, is the comb.
Right.
If it is like this,
Right.
and the angle is like this,
Right.
so the bees will know the food source
Right.
is 30 degrees angle from the sun
Or
in
in
that
position
direction.
to the sun.
In position to the sun. So if you fly in that direction
Right,
for that many kilometers,
right,
1 kilometer or 2 kilometers,
right.
bees can fly up to 15 kilometers and come back.
Really?
So in reality, once they come back, so the bees don't have to waste any more time searching for food.
Right.
They take this information in their head
Yeah.
and go out.
Also, after the workers have come back, it's the workers who go out and then come back, they give this information and then...
The rest of the forces will go to follow.
Is it one who goes out or two or
No,
three
it's
scouts?
yeah, the scouts about it's a handful of bees.
Right, right.
But again, it's part of organization because instead of all the bees going out to search
Right.
for food,
Yeah.
no, the first one will go first, and as they keep doing this job,
Right.
they keep bringing the information, and if the source depleted from the food source, the scouts will have another source identified,
for them.
ready for them.
Really?
So it's quite organized. Maybe for us, if we look at it, sometimes we think, well, wow, how do they do that?
Yeah,
So that's basically when we say awha,
right,
that's basically God inspired them to do
right,
that.
right, right,
And recent science, you say it's instinct.
right, right.
And that's true because
Yeah.
how can a bee born today, they know exactly their duties
Right.
to go and do inside the
Right,
hives,
right.
one after the other.
Right.
And once the hair turn comes out to go outside to the
right.
food source,
Absolutely, yeah.
they start going without training. But that means it is already
It's in the genetics,
In
in
ge-
their, and that's exactly what it means that وَأَوْحَى رَبُّكَ إِلَى النَّحْلِ,
yes.
that God inspired or revealed. I call Dr. Revelation, seem very fascinating to me that,
Yes.
and basically that's what God does. That, and you were also mentioning that the social structure.
Yes.
This is one aspect where, of course, I have not seen a lot of good discussion that God, this whole chapter on Nahl is focused on human beings and other things.
Yes.
So we could learn a lot of things from just even this verse 69.
Yes.
That, and you also said that Anittakhazi is a female, reference to a female bee.
Yes.
And the way you described it should be very intriguing for our readers to, even I didn't realize it's so specific that angle of the sun
Yes.
and the flower
Yeah.
and the distance they measure.
Yeah.
Of course, meter and kilometer is our measure.
Yeah.
They probably have the measure that in each dance is,
Yeah, equivalent of certain distance.
right,
In fact, the person who discovered this kind of discovery, Dr. von Frisch, he's a German, and he actually won a Nobel Prize
really?
for that discovery because it was quite unique.
Yeah.
And he did several experiments. Even he also was able to show, beside recognition of distance and food source
Right,
and
right,
translating it in
right.
simple language to the rest of the bees,
Right.
also bees can recognize colors. And if we look at the colors honeybees can recognize, it's kind of a little bit different. They recognize the color spectrum, but it's more towards the UV light.
Oh, I see. Okay, they don't see color the way we see it.
No.
Okay,
So if you look at the color, they don't see red.
right. Oh, they
But
can't-
this, yeah, because red actually, for them, it looks like dark.
Oh, I see,
however,
black, dark. Okay.
Right. But UV color, there are lots of components.
By you, mean the ultraviolet light
Yes.
component of the sunlight.
Of the sunlight.
Okay, I see.
So if the sun already during the daytime will reflect on the plant,
Right.
actually the flower in the plant
Yeah.
will have a special color and shape under the UV light. So
Oh, I see.
the
What you're
only-
saying is that the way we see a flower as a yellow color or bright color, the bees see it differently, as if we see under UV light, ultraviolet lamp, and
yes.
with different colors there.
different color and different shape.
How
So
interesting.
that's how it attracts the honeybees themselves. And those flowers and those plants, we call them specialized in honeybees because the bees will visit only those flowers.
And they have a lot of pollen for the bees as well there?
Actually, yes, the pollen and the structure of the flower will allow the bees to visit and can easily collect the nectar and pollen. Think about the other example, which is different. Birds also, they visit flowers,
Right.
like the hummingbird.
Right,
That one will go after the nectar produced in the flower.
right.
Birds they don't see UV light. However, they see the red.
Really?
So in reality, the structure of that flower
Right.
and the color will
Right,
attract
right.
the hummingbirds. The hummingbirds. So the difference between the hummingbirds and bees, as you can see, there is no conflict
Right.
in what's happening out there. Some flowers will attract
Bird,
bees.
exactly, yeah.
Other flowers will attract birds. Actually, there's some other flowers will attract bats
Right, right.
and different animals for
So
pollination.
each flower could partake of the blessings from each bees and birds could partake from the same flower, from the same component. If bees are going for pollen,
Yes.
and the bird is going for the nectar,
Yeah.
and bee might collect a little bit of nectar as well, I guess.
Yeah, the bees. But to distinguish between both and they don't have competition on the
Right.
same source,
Right.
they have two different distinct flowers. So that's the kind of, it's...
And people still, some say there's no God.
well, just as the verse say, go out and investigate and search and read.
Right.
And when you read with an open mind
Right,
and
right.
think deeply about, yes, it is instinct.
They're a sign for people who understand.
Right, it's a sign for people who understand.
So I'm glad you clarified on verse 69 that God revealed to be or inspired, and then you also clarified that they build their houses or hives, we call them,
Yeah.
in relatively dark places,
Yes.
not directly sunlight. So we also learned from you that the bees, I never could visualize what you told me, that is the sun and the flowers, food source, angle, and is a triangle, and then they communicate back in the hive. And one other point you made is so intriguing and fascinating to me, that energy conservation, that not suddenly all the bees are going out in search of food. That will be so chaotic, like chaos there.
Yeah.
So let's go to the next one, verse 70.
Yeah, there, verse 70 it says, ثم كلي من كل الثمرات فاسلكي سبل ربك ذلك يخرج من بطونها شراب مختلف ألوانه فيه شفاء للناس إن في ذلك لآية لقوم يتفكرون.
Exactly. Yeah. So here likely, I think we'll revisit the bees a little bit more, but focusing on this one for the time being. So then eat of all manner of fruits and follow the ways taught thee by the Lord,
Yes.
and which have been made easy for thee. And that's exactly what you're describing, how then the honeybees are equipped properly to find the food source, come back. And what do they do after they have collected pollen? What do they do in the hive? Now, that again is a whole subject, a whole program.
Yeah.
But briefly tell us, when Allah says that follow the ways taught and which are made, so they eat. That's what they do. So it will also mean that they digest and also secrete something. Is that what honey is?
No, not really. In fact, the honey bees equipped in terms of, you look at the anatomy
Right.
or the body structure,
Right,
and that's why it says it is equipped.
right,
Usually the bees, as they dive into the flower,
right,
the pollen comes from the male part of the flower,
right.
and it sheds, like it becomes like a drops. It
Oh,
goes
so
in
they go with the force.
with the force,
Oh, I see.
and as they land,
Right,
the flower, when it's ripened,
right,
the answers will open,
right,
and pollen granules
out, yeah.
will come and fall in the bee body.
right.
As they fall in on the honeybee body, the bees, they have actually in their legs some brushes. So it's like the comb. So they start going from one side,
Right.
collecting the pollen from their body as if they are cleaning the body from this,
Right.
and start backing in the opposite leg.
Oh, that's why you see sometime
Pellets,
exactly right here.
right.
Okay.
So in reality, you can see there is in one of these slides we're showing, as you can see right now, the pellets start forming, and as they feel that's enough for their body,
Right.
they start flying back to the hive. And those ones
So
actually,
do they get a signal they're enough loaded, their weight is enough or something?
that's true. If you ask me how we don't know,
Right.
we don't know really.
Right, right.
But the most interesting part, if you look at the honeybee structure and the weight of this pollen they are
Right.
carrying, It's almost 1/3 of their body.
1/3. So what will be the weight of a standard honeybee?
It's a live bee. It's about 110 milligrams.
110 milligrams.
Right.
So there will be 10 to 12 in a gram.
Right.
How interesting.
So we don't see.
This is the fresh weight, of course. Right?
That's a fresh weight, yes, yeah. But keep in mind, like, you know, how much of those bee, like that weight, any plane or any it can carry in the side.
So 30, 40 milligram of pollen they could carry roughly.
And bring it to the house. And those ones, as they go to the house, they start dropping off these pellets.
So they just
like there is they have a kind of a needle and poke this pollen pellet, so it will drop right off.
Oh, as a pellet, as a round thing.
As a round thing, and it stays as round thing.
Right.
Then the housekeepers, which is different, the younger bees.
So is it a landing station? I mean, they come at a certain place in a hive that...
No, actually they go any place inside the hive.
Okay.
And later on, as they go, they try to be organized and clean.
Right.
They don't just scatter.
Okay.
They know there's an area for raising the youngest.
Right, right.
Around those ones, they need actually the pollen. And outside of that area, they put the honey. So that way, they organize the house. So you don't see...
Do you think in summer sometime we'll be able to see a cross-section of that?
Absolutely, you can see it.
Okay.
And the colony, if it is healthy, it's doing a good job.
Right.
Everything is quite clean, organized, and they don't leave some pellets in the bottom of the box.
Right.
No, they are not messy. But as soon as the workers get the pellets, they start to grinding these pellets and store it in the hexagonal cells.
Right.
They add some liquid we don't know actually, and that's kind of
so it's actually something from their
mandibles
comes out.
And this pollen can be stored without getting spoiled or growing any yeast or any fungus.
Because that's a rich source of vitamins and minerals and proteins right there.
But it can stay like this for years without any change.
Right. We have to stop it right here for the time being. Inshallah, we'll continue our discussion. So basically, we are talking about honeybees. We are so fortunate that Dr. Medhet Nasr has been able to explain to us in context from the writings of the Holy Quran that how God revealed to the bee. And then right now, we have talked about how the position, how they find food, and inshallah, we'll continue a little bit more. Very, very fascinating subject. May Allah be with you. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.